Praise the Lord, everyone. Today let us learn one of the spiritual lessons from the book of Exodus in the Bible. Today our topic is Finding Your Purpose in the Wilderness, Lessons from Moses in Exodus. The story of Moses in the book of Exodus provides numerous lessons for young people who are seeking to find their purpose in life. In particular, the period of time that Moses spent in the wilderness is a powerful metaphor for the challenges and opportunities that young people often encounter as they seek to discover their calling in life. This podcast will explore the story of Moses in the wilderness and highlight some of the key lessons that can be drawn from his experiences. Moses was born into a Hebrew family at a time when the Israelites were living in slavery in Egypt. However, his mother was able to save him by placing him in a basket and sending him down the Nile River. Moses was eventually found and raised by Pharaoh's daughter, but he never forgot his roots as a Hebrew. One day, when he was an adult, he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, and in his anger, he killed the Egyptian. When Pharaoh found out, Moses fled to the wilderness to escape punishment. In the wilderness, Moses encountered God in a burning bush. God called him to return to Egypt to lead the Israelites out of slavery. At first, Moses was reluctant, but eventually, he accepted God's call and returned to Egypt. He confronted Pharaoh, and after a series of plagues, the Israelites were allowed to leave Egypt. However, they soon found themselves trapped between Pharaoh's army and the Red Sea. God miraculously parted the waters, allowing the Israelites to cross to safety, and then closed the waters over the pursuing Egyptian army. After crossing the Red Sea, the Israelites spent 40 years in the wilderness before they reached the Promised Land. During this time, they faced numerous challenges, including hunger, thirst, and attacks by hostile tribes. However, God provided for them by sending manna from heaven and water from a rock. Moses led the Israelites through the wilderness, but he also faced opposition and criticism from some of the people. From the story of Moses in the wilderness, we can draw several lessons that are relevant to young people today. Firstly, we can see that God often calls people to unexpected places and situations in order to accomplish His purposes. Moses was a prince of Egypt, but he was also a Hebrew who was able to identify with his people's suffering. God used his experiences in the wilderness to prepare him for the task of leading the Israelites out of slavery. Secondly, we can see that finding our purpose in life often involves a period of testing and preparation. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before he was ready to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. During this time, he learned to depend on God and to trust in His provision. Similarly, young people today may need to go through periods of hardship and struggle in order to develop the skills and character traits that they will need to fulfill their calling. Thirdly, we can see that God is faithful to His promises and will provide for us even in the midst of difficult circumstances. The Israelites faced many challenges in the wilderness, but God provided for them by sending them food and water. Similarly, young people today can trust that God will provide for their needs as they seek to follow Him. Fourthly, we can learn from Moses that our past mistakes and failures do not have to define our future. Moses had a difficult past, having been raised as a prince of Egypt but later fleeing to the wilderness after committing murder. However, God still had a plan for his life, and He used Moses' experiences in the wilderness to prepare him for the task of leading the Israelites out of slavery. Similarly, young people today may have made mistakes or experienced failures in the past, but they can still trust that God has a purpose for their lives, and that He can use their experiences to prepare them for their calling. Fifthly, we can learn from Moses that true leadership is grounded in a relationship with God. Moses had a close relationship with God, and he sought God's guidance and direction throughout his leadership of the Israelites. He recognized that he could not fulfill his calling on his own, but needed to depend on God's strength and wisdom. Similarly, young people today who are called to leadership roles can learn from Moses' example and seek to deepen their relationship with God, relying on His strength and guidance to fulfill their calling. Finally, we can see that leadership involves both courage and humility. Moses had to confront Pharaoh and lead the Israelites through the wilderness, but he also had to deal with opposition and criticism from some of his own people. Young people who are called to leadership roles will also face challenges and opposition, but they can learn from Moses' example of courage and humility. In conclusion, the story of Moses in the book of Exodus provides many valuable lessons for young people who are seeking to find their purpose in life. The period of time that Moses spent in the wilderness is a powerful metaphor for the challenges and opportunities that young people often encounter as they seek to discover their calling in life. By examining Moses' experiences in the wilderness, we can learn that finding our purpose often involves unexpected challenges, periods of testing and preparation, and a reliance on God's provision. We can also see that leadership requires both courage and humility, as well as a willingness to confront opposition and criticism. Ultimately, the story of Moses in the wilderness encourages young people to trust in God's plan for their lives and to follow Him wherever He may lead them. May God bless you.